And welcome to Rutherford County School Board. This is called session for the building program. Our meeting will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by our friend at the end down here, Jim Estes. Estes. Good evening, board and staff and everyone. Our meeting tonight centers around the building program, of course, and our director will lead us through the agenda, beginning with the site survey for Laverne High School and Smyrna High School concession and restroom buildings. And you have a maps, and you have what that survey includes, and of course a recommendation in front of you. Mr. Director?
Okay, I'll read this one. This is the site survey for Smyrna High and Laverne. And this one is Brown Surveying has submitted a proposal for site surveying at Laverne and Smyrna High School restrooms and concessions. The survey will locate the utilities and define elevations of sewer, topology, and finished floors of existing buildings. The cost of the survey is as follows. Smyrna, $2,300, and Laverne, $1,800. These have to be completed to get this critical information on the plans before these projects can go out to bid. Funding will come from the GPS capital outlay. Recommend approval. The motion is to approve Brown Surveying to complete the site surveys as approved. And Mr. Clardy's certainly led this up. If you've got some follow-up questions you'd like to ask.
Mr. Clardy, any comments before about this particular?
No, these just help us clarify some areas on the plans that'll give us a more accurate bid. And we need to get them done as soon as possible so we can get those things out to bid.
Well, I would think if there's any project that this board is familiar with, this is it. Everybody in the room, this has been talked about and discussed from every possible angle, but there may be some questions, there may be some comments, and if so, let's hear it.
They do know the actual location because I see Stewart's Creek High School on both of the site plans.
Yeah, that was, those came off of the original Stewart's Creek High School. We bid them when that was bid, and of course they're in the process right now of moving those over to their own sheet.
Why is Smyrna a little bit more than Laverne? Is that just got a little more site work there? Or?
It's kind of difficult because it's on that end between the road and the stadium, and it is steeper terrain, a little bit more problematical.
Is this for the project that puts concessions on the visitor side as well?
It will be set up like our existing newer fields with the concessions in the end, just as Siegel is, just as Stewart's Creek High School is, and then those can be approached from either side equally, pretty much.
I don't think your schools would want to staff two of them.
Okay.
Most of the time, to be honest with you. Because that's what we do at the other high schools. It's a rather large complex and works quite well.
So the concept is not we have restrooms on the home side, we're going to add restrooms on the visitor side. The concept is we're going to have a more neutral set of restrooms that are positioned more adequately and equitable to what the other high schools have.
Yes, that's correct. And the main thing is strategically placed, but also very similar to the newer high schools.
Right, okay.
Seems to work very well. Where have I been this year? Stewart's Creek, Riverdale. Yeah. And past years, Siegel and Oakland, both are all about the same.
Yes.
It seems to work fairly well.
SROs usually position one of their, like they may have 8 SROs at a game, so one will usually position themselves around that area also.
With Smyrna, will we also have service out of the end that will allow it dual use for baseball as well? Because it's positioned so closely to the baseball field?
I don't think so, really.
The problem is if you do it from that end, your parents are not gonna be able to watch their students play from, if they're on the other end.
Okay.
So, and that's one of the attractiveness of having the concession stand that close, is to have volunteers and get a chance to see the participants.
We had quite a bit of parental and booster input in the original designs of these to put them there, so people that are working the concessions are very interested in watching the games, and it works well to be serviced both sides, visitors and home, but also the people who are involved can watch the game as they're serving.
Other questions, comments? Excuse me, Mr. Hodge.
I don't have, I'm just gonna make a motion to approve it.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Need a second?
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any other further comments, discussions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? There is none, so we can proceed with this much-needed project. And on to a more expensive and also necessary project,
Right.
Rockvale High School parking.
This is traffic impact study.
Traffic.
Met with the state, TDOT, Ms. DeClarty met with them, and of course, one of their things, well, you gotta do us a traffic study first. You know, what's the impact there? I did read in the last couple of weeks that Muffinsburg's talking about running more road out that way too. That came out in the News Journal one day. I don't know how much is involved, but expecting that area certainly to grow and the traffic increase. It's pretty crowded in the mornings right now coming in on 99. So that's what this is. It's tied back so that we can get back with TDOT and see what they'll allow us to do, what kind of lanes, that sort of thing we need. So Barge Coffin and Associates has submitted a proposal for a traffic impact study. The study will evaluate the impacts of the proposed Rockvale High School expansion and present recommendations for accommodating the projected traffic volume. The cost of the study is $15,000. A more in-depth scope is attached for the board's review. Recommend approval. The motion is to approve Barge Coffin and Associates for a traffic study, impact study for the proposed Rockvale High School as presented. And you may want Mr. Clardy to kind of talk to you about this one.
Mr. Clardy?
These, right now, we have a very difficult issue out there, whereas people are lining up to get in and out of those campuses, and of course, it is holding up the through traffic. So we need to know how to resolve that, and these people will go out there and study that traffic for a few days, and even as far back as Veterans Parkway and those areas to see where all those cars are coming from to get through, and they will recommend what we need to do. Now, I did meet with TDOT, and of course, as Mr. Odom said, they wanted us to do a traffic study. They would not pay for it, and they said right now in their plans, they have plans from 96 out to Veterans Parkway to widen that road all the way out there right now. And they really didn't give us any hope of any financing or funds to help us to resolve our issue at Rockvale. But they said do a traffic study and then get back with them, and then we would go from that point.
Is there an easement to Brown Road that comes around the back of the site,
There's an easement out to Thompson Road, I think.
Thompson, where it's already Brown?
Right, and we plan on using that when we, to incorporate that into the high school building. So it's some traffic, that would ease traffic on 99 a little bit.
The state of Tennessee has been talking about that, widening that road for at least 10 years. It's been surveyed at least 9 years. I'm positive of that. And Veterans Parkway, which you just spoke to, is still a mile or so short of the school. I obviously want to have a traffic study done, but I would just like to, I have some experience in the area. It used to be an area that I represented is on the commission, and my daughter lives just about a mile past the school. So she's complained about it for years, of course. She tells me it is, as you just said, an extremely difficult problem. And I watched this board really discuss the Stewart's Creek problem for a long time in this very room, and you had a lot of trouble resolving that. And I suspect after this traffic study, we're gonna have to get pretty creative. That would be my guess.
I think it would, if you recall at Stewart's Creek, we got what needed to be done approved through the state, and then the town of Smyrna and the Rutherford County School Board and Commission actually funded the work there, which helped us resolve the problem. But seeing where Stewart's Creek's located and no more problems than we have, we're really blessed out there in that area, because Poplar Wood is a very difficult road. There's no way to get the water out. It's a low spot, so we're lucky that the elementary school, for instance, can empty out in about 9 or 10 minutes and have everyone off campus. So if we can get to that point at Rockvale, we'll have done a lot of good.
Well, that's down the road. The first order of business is the traffic study.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. A second from someone?
Second.
Mr. Young, thank you. Any further comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And there are none. And onward with the building program, Mr. Director.
Okay. Let me say at the beginning of this, I think you probably would rather not vote on approving this tonight. It's your call, but it certainly would be fine. You're just seeing it. You can talk with each other, look at some of the data. We're going to share all that with you tonight. If you'd like to bring it back at another meeting for changes or approval, would be my recommendation probably at this particular point. But I want to share some things with you if we could. Number one, you have one sheet in there. It's today's attendance. That was taken a little after 1 o'clock today. So you've got it by school, and how it compares to the third month. The third month's numbers, I believe, ends on November the 4th. It's one of those primary months that the state uses to measure growth and all. So as of a little after 1 o'clock, we're 1,033 over that third month last year. This is really interesting numbers. I checked it the Friday before we left for fall break, and we were at 971. So you kind of see what happens sometimes by the numbers in and out. At any time of the day you can do this, and the numbers will be different as people move in and out. But it lets you kind of see. So 16 schools still have 4% or more growth based on that third month last year numbers. So people that are listening to us on the TV can kind of hear that. 16 schools, and that's significant. The second sheet, one of the things that I wanted to share with you is the 2016-17 5-year building plan data. This is a little bit new. If you can find that one, it's also a spreadsheet. So what we did to kind of put this together is these clusters. This is not every school in the county, but the schools or the property or the recommendations that'll come up on this spreadsheet, Mr. Sandvik's spreadsheet with cost, this is some data to say why we're selecting those. So the first one, if you look at the top, looking at the south and southeast schools are elementary. But I want to explain to you kind of what some of the columns, what some of this actually means when we stop and take a look at it. We have the brick and mortar capacity, and of course what changes very much on brick and mortar capacity is the grade structure. People ask me very often, well, how many students can that school hold? Well, tell me what grade you want there, because K through 3 is 1 to 20, and then you get 4 through 6, that's 1 to 25, and above that you go 1 to 30. So all of that drives it very much, whatever kind of grade structure that you look at. The other thing that we have, and Mr. Clardy, again, follows up on school capacity and national conference and that. You almost never can use something at a full 100% capacity. I don't care what you do. It's very difficult to do full 100%. So this is a sheet, and the numbers I've taken are from this sheet. Mr. Clardy has that, and he can explain that to us if you'd like to know more about that. Utilization rates across the nation are usually somewhere between 95 and 100%. For us, I chose a number like 95.5. And one of the reasons we chose it close to the lower number there is because we're third largest ESL. That's small group numbers, the RTI program, the interventions that's in place with that. So it's really hard to get much more than about a 95 to 96% utilization in that. Junior high is 70 to 85%. I put in about 81% there as an estimate. It's kind of in between, more towards the high side. The high schools across the country runs 80 to 85% capacity, and we used basically 82.5, which is kind of halfway in between. And what drives your high school very often is you have advanced placement courses. You ask that there be at least 15 students in an AP class. All of your career and technical education, which we have a large number, are 1 to 20. They're actually the same ratio as your K through 3 numbers. So it's not 1 to 30 when you look at a high school because of some of those special classes that you have, and also for your CTE numbers. So the utilization, Mr. Clardy, would you kind of tell them a little bit more about the utilization, because you may get asked questions about this when we share with the commission, so I want you to understand it.
First of all, the utilization rate is a factor and a result of a study that was done by the Council of Educational Facility Planners International. And this is a group of facility engineers, professional engineers, school personnel, and just a bunch of stakeholders for this particular issue. And they define capacity as the number of students that can accommodate or can be accommodated by a school building or site. And our issue, of course, is educational or school facility. And I'm going to kind of give you the Reader's Digest version of this, and if you want more, there's plenty of it. And if you want a copy of this, I'll be glad to make you a copy of it. But in defining school capacity, there's several variables, and that amounts to physical variables, which is building size, numbers and types of teaching station, support facilities like kitchen, lunchroom, etc., infrastructure, building life safety code and site amenities. Then operational values or variables, which is utilization rates and efficiency, operational policies, staffing, funding structures, teachers, and their regulations, space management, staff and operational budget, and specialty program offerings. And then you come into the programmatic variables, which is class size and staff ratios, educational program offerings, operational models, specialty program schedules, partnerships, and off-site learning and extended use. And so that makes up the utilization capacity, all of those things. You have such things, capacity can be broken down into maximum capacity, building capacity, functional capacity, program capacity, and temporary capacity, like our portables, for instance. So this group did a number of studies throughout the nation, and they took an average of all of those studies that they did and came up with the utilization rates of elementary is between 95 and 100%.
That's really at the bottom in small print at your right-hand corner if you want to see what he's looking at. So put it.
And the middle and junior high is 70 to 85%, and high schools are 80 to 85%, and that is a percentage of the core capacity of those schools. So, for instance, if you have 1,000 student middle school and you chose between that 70 to 85, which is 80%, it was a core capacity of 1,000, then it would only, with all the programs and everything else going on in there, it would only be able to utilize 80%, or 800 students could be seated in that school. And so just because we build a school for 1,000 people doesn't mean that it's going to, because the programs are constantly changing, as you know, doesn't mean it's going to seat 1,000 children. It means that more than likely it's going to seat around 800 students with everything else that's going on. So there's gross area per student per square foot, and the southern tier states on an average run at 70 square feet for one student. That's a 7 by 10 area. Southern tier state for middle school buildings is about 82 square feet, and southern tier state for high school students is 102 square feet, or approximately a 10 by 10. And that's all the area in those schools. For instance, in Chicago, and this is, not too comparable, but I thought this study was interesting. In Chicago public schools, any school that exceeds 80% of its maximum capacity is not called overcrowded. Anything that is 100% or above the maximum capacity is severe overcrowding. If a school falls below 65% of its maximum capacity, it's assumed to have excess building space. And there's a lot of programmatic exceptions, of course, so it's very difficult to get a handle on that. But that's basically the Reader's Digest version, so if you'd like to know more, I'd be glad to try to answer questions, or if you'd like, just let me know after the meeting. I'll make sure you get a copy of this study so you can, if you need to fully understand it, you'll be able to do that.
So let me kind of explain to you how it looks on our chart. If you kind of look at the first school up there, Barfield, they today had 999 students. We basically built most of those elementary schools at that time for $850. If it's 95.5% effective use rate, you can house about 812. You get more than that, then you start using, and you hear this all the time, we're using, I hate to say the word closet or some other area, or you're kind of cutting off an area in a hallway or something like that to do it. So they're about, and I'm not including the portables, they're there because your desire is to get rid of portables. So they're about 187 students over, and the reason they're surviving is because we have the 2 portables there. So the other 2 columns are kind of how many roaming teachers, whatever you'd like to call them, teachers on a cart, we call them a number of things. And then the last column is when we built the school or added to the school. So I thought historically, and that comes from Mr. Evans' report that he does for us every winter. So kind of looking at them in groups, south and southeast schools, remember they just approved, the commission within the last month or so, 100 and something new development on Midland Road in that area. And what got our attention there is because Christiana Elementary is full and Rockvale Elementary is full. So when you take a look at that in Barfield with 999, we're basically saying that down the road, 147 is kind of where we are now. So that's an area that in the future that very likely we're going to have to address somewhere. And we're looking, I think you have property on this 5-year building plan to address that. As you look down northwest Smyrna Laverne in the next section, the Cedar Grove, the Day Dury, Rock Springs Elementary, and Stewart's Creek Elementary, even though that's 408, we still do not have the money for the Rocky Fork Elementary School. So if we get Rocky Fork Elementary School, that should impact that particular section of schools. Now, we won't have every school listed, but the ones that would probably be impacted with zoning potential changes is the ones that I've listed. So let you see it that way. On the other side, on northwest Smyrna, and the elementaries are all clustered together, and we moved down, is John Coleman, Laverne Primary, and Smyrna Elementary. I guess, again, John Coleman, looking at that, of course, you know they have 15 portables there now. So hopefully when John Coleman is built out, that we may be able to handle that in the short term. We're showing maybe 158, just depends on, of course, what happens. So we're not recommending another building on the north west side of Smyrna at this time. You know, that's Las Casas is another one, comes up as an elementary. They do have some capacity there. If you look at the utilization numbers and all, maybe 200 to 300, but something's going to happen there because of the 142 homes out around what Mr. Young and I call 12 corner area, and they just purchased another piece of property next door to that, and then also the property that's on 96 from about 170 houses, you know, that'll be zoned Las Casas. So how quick is that going to build out? Not sure just yet, but this is one that we don't have something in the building program for, but will be an issue, again, probably 3-4 years down the road. Can we add there? Possibly, you know, but that's an issue. In the middle school area, and this is one that really does catch my attention very, very quickly. So looking on the north side, the Oakland Middle and the Siegel Middle, both of those schools are now over 1,100 students already, is what we're seeing. We've got some capacity at Whitworth Buchanan, which really handles more of the east and the southern side with Christiana Middle and all. So it's not as easy to look at in terms of that. You know, we have the property there. The commission purchased for us the property to do the addition onto Oakland Middle School. But here's my thought. If we're 610 off now, with what's going out in the Las Casas area and what's happening on the north side, my recommendation is that we look at some property a little further out that might last 8 or 10 years. That maybe we need to look at another middle school site, save that addition at Oakland, but to try to capture something. If you're already at 610 with the building that's going on, the Oakland, if we do Oakland and take care of them, what about Siegel? That's where I am in that. So again, that's one of the things, and we talked about this before, if you remember, it was discussed. Looking at Northwest Middle, Laverne Middle, and Rock Springs Middle, Rock Springs Middle will be helped by Rocky Fork Middle School. We may be able to solve much of that one. Laverne Middle is a little bit more problematic, but you have an item on your 5-year building plan for a smaller addition to Laverne Middle. It's interesting, Mr. Holman was speaking with Mr. Zago today. They were talking about it some, and he is hearing things like, of course, Lake Forest is the largest subdivision in Tennessee, I think, in that. And they said at any given time, they may have up to 400 homes not occupied. Part of it's HUD and all that's kind of tied together and all of that. So if something happens in this particular case, then we could have some issues there. So we do have a contingent in there to add on to Laverne Middle, just to kind of let you know that. In South Middle, the Blackman Middle, the Christiana Middle, and the Rockvale Middle, those, just using the capacity numbers, 505 over already. And looking at that, and of course, Blackman Middle quickly jumped to 17 today, and you're close to 1,000 at both Christiana and Rockvale Middle. So that's another issue there to look at that. The other side is the north side with our high schools. We're talking about some rezoning for that, but Oakland is now our largest high school. It's past Blackman, if you'll look at that number in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And so that number there for high schools on that side, about 648 off, mostly because of the Oakland situation. And we have on this, we'll have to look at zoning. We have also an addition that part of when Siegel High was built, it was stubbed out, because we do have at Siegel High already, if you'll look at the classrooms and portables, there are 10. So if your desire is to kind of get out of portables, that addition is going to need to be done sometime. We're actually moving additional portables to Oakland High when we open John Coleman. So Mr. Carter and Mr. Zago has already worked on that to try to address some of their growth, but that doesn't get us out of portables, it goes deeper in. On the south and southwest high school, and this is where we're talking Rockvale High. And so the numbers for looking for that was Blackman High at 2172 and Riverdale at 2030, Stewart's Creek at 2116. You've got over 6,000 students. Every one of those schools is over 2,000 students. So if you use the utilization studies and that sort of thing, it's over 1,100 students overutilized at this time. You know, if you remove the portables everywhere. So to try to say, do we need a Rockvale High School? I really think we do. You know, so do you kind of understand what we've done for you here and kind of clustering that? And if you'd like to know more or that sort of thing, but we pick schools that would probably be affected by a new school on this or a zoning or some other issue with that. But I just thought you might find that interesting to take a look at it. Now, the other piece of news that I would give you, I did reach out to the city and say, what are you going to do? And Dr. Gilbert and I are pretty good friends, and we do share information. So she just really shared with me some information, because we need this information to decide what we do in our sense. They are currently in the process of adding 10 classrooms to Black Fox for next fall. Black Fox is on the eastern side, you know what we're talking about, near Manchester Highway or something. Will that help Buchanan Elementary? Not sure. In that particular case, whether more will go to the city, or they're just really trying to handle their growth in that particular area also because of development. So she then went on to say that they're not thinking about opening another full elementary school until 2019. We're in 2016, not quite in that in the fall. So we're 2.5 years away from when they're looking at another elementary school. And where they're looking now mostly is really on the south side of Veterans. So Armstrong Valley, south side of Veterans that way, which is a little bit of that impact that we talked about. Of course, Midland Road is out on our side, but much of the building in the city, and if you look at the new projects that are being approved and the ones that's requesting approval from developers, is really kind of in that south side right now. You're seeing a pretty good number of those in that one. So that's what they're looking at. I don't know how much would be annexed into that, but that's where our Barfield sits with 999 too. That's what we serve with that, basically. And some with the Christiana Elementary as you go out that way off of 231. The other school, and then she went on to say it would probably be at least a couple of years after that before they would look at the 840 Veterans Parkway area, which is over where the Shelton property, you remember that 750 home development? They're projecting that to be a slower build out. Bob Parks is building that one, so it's somewhere in the 750 homes in that, but that'd be 2021. So that's really getting on out there a lot further. So again, city, Black Fox right now, 2.5 years, looking at both ends of Veterans Parkway and I'm sure they'll be responsive to wherever the development comes first, but right now they're thinking the south's going to go faster than the north. So that just kind of brings you up to date. Glad they shared with us. I appreciate it. I also shared with her what we were taking a look at. Okay, you ready kind of to look at the spreadsheet now with some of that? Or you got questions about so far?
Just looking over this right here, if I'm looking at this classrooms and portables and roving teachers, the North Middle Schools and the North High Schools, look to me, the two areas we need to be addressing the most. And I don't really see us addressing that in the building plan until,
Well, your North Middle School will be addressed somewhat by Rocky Fork Middle.
that will help us. So
See, that will come from, we clustered those together. Rock Springs Middle is a problem with the 1,101, so a number of those students will go to Rocky Fork. Then probably what Mr. Morgan will have to come back and look at us and say, can we with Laverne Middle, will we then be able to move some Laverne Middle students that's over on that particular area, then into, it's gonna be that domino effect, into the Rock Springs Middle.
I guess I was talking more Oakland Middle and Siegel Middle as far as,
Oh, on that side?
yeah, on that
Yes.
north side there. I mean, we're 12 portables and about 4 or 5 people here that's roving around as far as teachers go. And then on the high school side, we're 14 portables and we've got 10 teachers roving around. I just think by waiting until the year 21, that may be putting us off too long there.
Maybe.
Look at maybe moving that up to 19 if we could. Because I know they're building houses a lot faster than we building schools, so.
Absolutely. The number at, and what was surprised us a little bit, the growth at Whitworth has not been as quick. If you look at the sheet of attendance, you can see it's not on this sheet because they wouldn't be affected necessarily by zoning unless, a couple of, 3 years ago now, I guess, when we were doing Whitworth Buchanan, when we kind of drew those lines, the Oakland area has grown faster than the Whitworth Buchanan. But with the Maples development and that sort of thing, it's certainly going to grow too. But in the short term, you either got to do Oakland or you got to look at zoning again, probably, for Oakland Middle.
Mr. Odom, a couple of questions. What is the proposed brick and mortar capacity of new John Coleman? Is it 650 as stated here, or is it
That's
larger?
kind of what we thought, because you remember, it replaces a lot of it. It's not a full-size elementary school,
Right. Okay.
even with the 2-story. That's the kind of the estimate we've got for it now.
We were kind of crunched to get that on the site. Anyway, we even encroached on the city park a little bit, as if you recall. So.
And what is the brick and mortar capacity, and just for my information, because you've struck my interest here with brick and mortar capacity, for Holloway High School?
Do you have that on your?
I didn't bring it, but
Holloway High struggles a little bit. She gave me some today. They actually have some roving there now because of the way it's set up. You know, it is called our Second Chance High School.
True. I'm
It
impressed with,
doesn't offer a full CTE program.
right.
It doesn't offer the AP choices and the things like that. It's almost off the shelf as a high school to be zoned to.
True. The thing that strikes me is the 40% increase in enrollment from last year, and I wonder, are we approaching capacity? And if we have roving teachers and things of that nature, then we may indeed be. But I want to celebrate them for, a little bit of a resurgence that they're having this year, and in their programming and everything, and and just curious, is that about?
Let Mr. Evans tell you what they did, some things this year about Africa, because he was a part of that, rolling it out.
Well, Miss Drayton was the one that really came to all of us and said she was wanting to do something to get the numbers up because it had dropped, and so we brainstormed with her and came up with some ideas on market this a little better this year. And they did parent night. I'm sure they've done it in the past, but not recently. This is the first one they've done in a few years, and really spotlighted some of the options that school offers. Not only is it a second chance high school for those who need to catch up, we are seeing students who want to graduate early, and they're going there as well. And some students, I mean, I'm not from Rutherford County originally, but my graduating class was very small, about 100 students, more like an Eagleville situation. And some students thrive in that kind of environment, smaller one-on-one attention. So getting that out there, because Holloway has gone through so many different iterations since it started, that people were kind of confused about what is this school. And so that's what Ms. Drayton and some of the rest of us have been doing to help. So.
The nice thing about them, when they pick up 15 or 20 students from an area, then it really helps multiple high schools all around it.
I would say also that it's approaching full occupancy because we've been over a few times recently to look at areas, see if we could convert them into classroom areas, and haven't been able to.
Okay, all right.
So it's approaching full occupancy.
Patterson Park and things there, you're so close to everything, you don't have much. Other questions?
No vote called for on this, but, board, this is a great opportunity to ask some questions about the building program in general, 5-year plan.
Let's look at you want to look at the money pieces now? Because again, and that's where the years, and again, we're pretty good at 2 years or so, but it gets more problematic as it comes out. The first, at the top, from February 15, of course, Roy Waldron up until we hope to be in it by around Christmas time of this year, certainly start the second semester. And Mr. Sandvig has that in yellow, and so that's a completed thing. Looking at that, the second grouping of schools there, where it's in blue, that's pieces on this spreadsheet's been funded, right, Mr. Sandvig? The commission has voted to fund those pieces. So, yes, sir.
Some of it is internal borrowing. They have not gone to the bond market yet, but we do have approval to proceed. We have interfund borrowing or whatever.
So that second group, the Rocky Fork Middle, they did fund it. Smyrna Middle the other night, last week when they voted, they did vote to do some internal borrowing to finish out the Smyrna Middle. The David Urey was added. That was new funding. This was some borrowing with that. Again, Smyrna Middle was more of our moving money around. And then the restroom and concessions, the only thing we have right now is the design fee, which we'll have to bid out. So that section, pretty much with the exception of the LHS and SHS restroom concession, that one's handled. Now, when you start down to Rocky Fork Elementary, and the other is when we get into the new areas. So again, Rocky Fork Elementary, which we've had for some time, that we would open Rocky Fork Middle, the next year would be Rocky Fork Elementary. So why is your reason? If you look back up on the other sheet, look at your numbers at David Urey, the number of portables there, look at your numbers at Cedar Grove Elementary, that sort of thing, and look at Stewart's Creek Elementary in that area. That's what you're looking at there. Again, and that total, looking at that one's a $38 million for this section, but what I want to draw your attention to, we would love to take the next section, which is highlighted with Rockvale High School, that they did vote us the design money the other day, and that was really, really good that they did that. But really, if we're going to get in the Rockvale High School by 19, you're going to have to start some of the borrowing. It's over 2 years, but you're going to need to start this next spring in 17. So when we look at 38 million, the 38 million there, part of that 93 could come earlier, and actually in the borrowing cycle to start that Rockvale High School. So again, looking at the cost of our last one and all, we've had to raise some of the numbers for the cost of what we expect for Rockvale High School. So you can kind of look at the section with Rocky Fork Elementary and the heading with Rocky Fork High School kind of put together. Another thing that we think we need to start taking a look at is probably start looking for the elementary school on the south side of Murfreesboro. In that particular case, that we need to start thinking about that. What can we do about that? And what that would cost. We didn't put in a land price there, Jeff. Do we need to add in a subsequent version? The land price for the south side, which was the Buchanan, the Rockvale, the Christiana, estimated for that one. So we were looking, we don't really have land there right now, so we're gonna need to insert a land there.
That's up in the previous year.
Okay, yeah, you're right, it is. With Rocky Fork Elementary, the land for South Musselburgh is again for 2 schools, yeah, my fault. We thought that when we purchased land on that side, that we would be better off for purchasing enough land for an elementary-middle combination. Rockvale High may take us a while for that area, but if Midland Road area and that southeast corridor does grow, Christiana Middle and Whitworth's there, that maybe, even though it's further down the road, but we probably, elementary will come first and then the middle. So our suggestion would be to purchase that land. We're also looking at this 840 corridor for a 3-school complex. And what we're looking at is between really the Blackman area and up towards the Amelville Road area. And that we need to go ahead and look for property there. Now, again, the city is telling us they're not going to look for anything or that till 2021. So that we need to look as early as this next spring, land for southeast side and then somewhere between this 840 corridor between Blackman and Neal. So that's a 3-school complex. And then coming on down to Rockvale High School, where I was a while ago, again, we need to start that funding this spring in order to get in for 2019. And then by 19, the new elementary school on the south side was talking about, and then the land on 231 North, and that's what Mr. Young was referring to. That may be one, if we want to try to move quicker on that, that could be moved up to another area. Again, we don't know how the commission will view that, but that's a thought there. And then going down to February 19, which getting into the schools in 2020 would be that middle school on South Veterans Parkway land, looking at that, and the middle school on the 231 north side, those lands. So you remember middle school and high school is our high growth. And when we look at this 1,033, over 300 of that, close to 700 of that is in our middle and high school growth. So they're going to hit us.
Can we, with Oakland Middle and Siegel Middle, they're right at critical right now. I can't see that we're not going to have to move that up at least a year, because, like I said, they're the highest growth schools right now with the middle schools. So
unless you can figure some way to take some of the load to Whitworth, you're going to have to do something on that side, and that would be very short term in that, I think.
yes, sir.
And the Oakland Middle alternative land, is that 231 North land?
Remember what we purchased is across that, what's the street name?
No, I understand that, but if we go to a
Athletic
separate
side.
facility,
Right, I honestly think, because it doesn't do anything for Siegel. If you take Oakland at 1,100 and we do what we did at Blackman, and you get up to 1,300, you move 200. If you look at this complex here, they're already 610 over.
right?
The only way you're going to handle this for a longer term period of time, to me, the best way for the county to spend money is to look to the north of that and come up with a middle school, even if you didn't have as large a middle school to start with, and you may handle it out 6, 8, 10 years. I mean, that's kind of an area that I'm familiar with. I know Mr. Young's familiar with, and several of y'all are. That's your districts. So it looks to me like rather than going in there and spending $12 million on the Oakland Middle Annex right now and not help Siegel Middle. We had Siegel Middle on there in some subsequent 5-year plans. We had a little addition for Siegel. But Siegel, if you remember, Siegel is one of the last ones we built with the wing concept. that goes off the middle. And where you have that wing concept, when Mr. Clardy came to save money, he went to the T concept, you know, where the wings go off 90-degree angles from the middle. It saved us money, saves us money in building, but then it also leaves space to add on to. But where you have that wing concept, if you think of Sequel Middle, there's not really a good place to add there, unless you go back and take away their baseball or some of their other soccer and some of their other fields. You just don't have property right there attached to the building that you can do much with.
Mr. Odom, won't that middle school on 231 north side of Murfreesboro take some pressure off of Oakland Middle?
Oakland and Siegel. We'd have to rezone, but the design would be, that one would handle growth on this, plus lower both Oakland and Siegel Middle. And then Oakland would then be handling more out 96 towards that Las Casas area. Whitworth Buchanan would handle more out towards, could even go around to Woodbury Road or Manchester Highway and all that side. So that's what you would be looking at.
So I think I'm going to say again, the 231 North land, that would be land that would address on the other page, North Middle, Oakland Middle, and Siegel Middle.
That's why we clustered them together, for that reason. That's why we did that.
Okay. Does that then coincide with what Mr. Blair just said, that 231 North land purchase may need to be moved up into the 17?
Possibly. But just think in mind now, again, I'm just thinking in terms of, you're gonna ask for the startup money for Rockvale High, and you got the other, but, I mean, we can ask for it, but, I mean, that's, I really hope they'll commit to Rockvale High, because I think we're in trouble if they don't really quickly, but it was kind of a money balance thing.
I think one thing you have to keep in mind is this is a living, breathing document. Next year, we may be back in here, and things may be totally different somewhere. Yep. So if we get it 2 years, we're doing pretty good, but if we get it 3 years and we're really doing well. But it's very difficult to get it out past 3 years. So this is actually a 5-year building plan, but the 3 years are about as close as you can get.
We left the Siegel, you see the Siegel High addition there, as the Oakland and Siegel grow, and you see the Oakland Middle Annex land there, that it's still there and it's usable. So if that area does continue to grow there, at some point you could go ahead and make the addition there like we did at Blackman. But I think I'm with you. We got to do one or the other. We either got to go ahead and build that Oakland Annex pretty quickly, or we got to go out there and build another middle school. But then you're going to have some really tough zoning to give Siegel Middle some relief. That's going to be your issue.
On the Siegel High School, the addition to it, that was 10 classrooms, right?
It was, and it's the 2-story, and it comes out on the side over there. If you think of where the greenhouse and all is, that was where it was stubbed out. If you kind of look at the plan, it goes out on that side.
If we put that off till 21, 22, they're already, that would just get rid of your portables there now.
Yes.
It's like we probably need to, I don't know whether we can put any more there or not. That's, Mr. Clardy had to tell us that. Whether you could add more than 10 classrooms.
We could probably have a 2-story double wide. Of course, I'm being flippant, but we are running out of space out there. We might be able to squeeze another one in, but it's very difficult.
Looks like the best alternative we've got is go out 231 and build a middle school and a high school.
Well, I mean, that's
That's the only way you're gonna relieve Oakland and Riverdale.
if we could purchase enough land to do that, that would certainly be. That area hasn't built as quickly, but it's going to. Jefferson Pike, one of the issues is, we talked about this, we talked about the Will adjournment. If you look at the Corps of Engineers floodplain, it sits a little low all the way down to Jefferson Pike, but As this county fills up, it will eventually, they'll pick up that too, but what's helped it all has basically been some of the floodplain area. That gets a little better as you come up closer to the Walter Hill. There is some property in there that's certainly above floodplain that could be developed rather quickly, and there's some talk about that, without naming anywhere or anything like that. That's a potential there.
I think that is probably a good idea, though, is maybe purchase enough property to kind of think out there ahead of things. It's not going to get any cheaper, that's for sure.
Other questions? Again, this doesn't look like last year's 5-year plan. But developments occurred this year that changed us from where we thought last year would be, you know?
When you talk about not voting on it tonight, what is the timeline for, we need to have something?
We will have to share this with Health and Ed, Budget and Finance, as your projection is, as your document of the what best we can see it. And again, I think we ran into trouble last year because it was somewhat late on the bidders. I would like to get something in place to where we could look at the Rockvale High pretty quickly. And if you want to go ahead with the Rocky Fork Elementary, I think you're going to have to look at the spring for that, because that's supposed to open the next year. If we open in fall of 2017, Rocky Fork Middle, we had Rocky Fork Elementary 2018. So you're looking at for high school funding, you're looking for Rocky Fork Elementary funding, and you're looking to purchase some property for the future. That's what you're looking at. The property is probably not as critical as getting those two buildings started to get some brick and mortar.
I would think, though, that the sooner you take it up there and let them have a look at it, the better off you are, because we've been reprimanded before for not giving them heads up, even though we've given them heads up for 4 or 5 years in a row. But everyone's memory gets a little short, so we need to take it up there and then take it again and take it again if we need to.
We took something in January. We would have to have another building look like tonight between now and then, would we not? Because we're not taking a vote tonight.
Yeah, I don't think you're ready to. You need to look
I'm
at
hoping
this data.
that this board, I know, will be discussing this and looking it over. There's a lot here to,
Right.
But it's January, certainly February, to Health and Ed.
What I have hopes of doing is going out in April for a bid for the high school.
Is this not something we could do at a regular board meeting?
I mean, you're spending most of the time tonight, but what we need to hear from you, other adjustments and changes, and let Jeff put it in the spreadsheet, and even if we have option 1, option 2, or something like that, and then kind of come to, we need to kind of hear from you what changes, and I'm hearing from Mr. Young possibly moving up that middle land purchase, and that, but whatever else, if you'll tell us, we can do that in options.
Mr. Sanders, do you want to say something?
Well, just, and you did not fuss at us in your previous incarnation. But yes, I had some irate commissioners. I wouldn't mind taking it to the November Health and Ed, actually. Give them plenty of time to review, digest, absorb, accept.
Meet in December?
That with this growth, 1,000, 1,200 a year, it's still, we have some challenges here. And I did notice, as Mr. Clardy and Mr. Odom and Mr. Zago and I have looked this over, the elementary school, south side of Murfreesboro, the years are wrong in that. That needs to change to 2019. Instead of, I've got it down there as opening in August of 2020. That should have been 2019. So just, there's one minor change.
Christiana is so full and Rockvale Elementary is so full. Yeah. Now, we do not have it here, but it is possible to add some to Rockvale Elementary. How big do you want an elementary school to become? I think the other side of the issue that you start looking at from a program standpoint, when you're running that 900 to 1,000, you can handle a little better with middle, and you can kind of handle the 2,000 with high school. But how big do you want your elementary for your lunch times, to get them into the gym for PE, and that sort of thing? How big do you want it to be? And that's our issue there. You can't add on to Eagleville again very well for elementary, so we're in an issue unless the new city school helps considerably.
Can you even expand the core on
Well, that's the problem at Rockvale is the core. You know, there is some land to do some wing addition, but your core may not work anymore.
Yeah, I don't see that working.
Well, that gives us something else to think about. The health and ed, doesn't usually meet in December. I think they're still adhering to that, but maybe they will meet earlier in December. I know when I was chairman, we did both. Sometimes we didn't meet at all. Other times we would meet a week earlier or something if the date was available. And the board had some business for us to conduct. We always called you, Mr. Sandvig, find out if you wanted to come, and you never wanted to come. I don't understand. We were very pleasant people. But seriously, you didn't have any business in December. But if we're not going to take a vote tonight, and that's fine, I don't think we should really. I mean, it's October the 17th, and to take something in November to the health and ed, we're going to have to meet sometime between now and then, another call meeting on the building program, which might give us a month and to do some thinking. Is that what the board would like to do?
What is the date for the meeting for health and ed in November? Can you tell me?
22nd.
27th?
Second.
Of October. November, November often gets moved.
Because of Thanksgiving?
Right.
Yeah, Tuesday, the 29th of November would be the normal.
That's not correct, is it?
Not according to my calendar, but I've got,
Well, if they moved it, I think he's saying if they moved it,
oh,
that would be the week after Thanksgiving, the 29th.
correct.
Yeah, I'm guessing they'd move it to the 29th.
Or the 22nd is the week.
Well, that's what we're doing. We're guessing. That's probably not a good idea to be guessing.
You know, the only thing that I can say that is I always kind of have a fear of not getting things up there early enough.
Right.
And the reason being is that we end up getting a stacked schedule. And that stacked schedule and crammed together always costs the taxpayers money, because the price goes up when you start cutting days off the beginning of that schedule. You cut 30 days off, it drives the cost up. So we realize that this year on the schools that we have going now. So we need to get it up there as soon as we can and get them focused on it so that they know what dates we've got to have this done by. If you take it in January and you want to get it approved in March, it could be that they say, hey, we hadn't really had time to think about this.
And we do have regularly scheduled meetings, work sessions and meetings, November 1st and 3rd, Tuesday and Thursday, and then November 15th and 17th, if y'all were interested in addressing.
Well, I think we would be, wouldn't we?
I think we would. Here's my suggestion for tonight. If you'll tell us what you think you might want to do with some changes in it, kind of as an option thing, we could have them for you by Thursday night to start looking at. I mean, it don't take long to change the spreadsheet. We can move stuff down, because what they look at is what is our cost per year. They project out what do we got to borrow, what's our cost per year. I guess one of the things that kind of caught my attention the other night, when they said they had borrowed, much of that was for the judicial building for the Rocky Fork Middle, was 101 million, something like that. They were hoping to wait a full year before they did another borrowing, and that's gonna throw you in late September or October before they want to borrow again, and, you know, we need to move before that, so that's the issue.
I'd like to recommend that we move the land purchase for the middle school and high school on the north side up to July 17th.
Okay, make a, July 17, look up the purchase of land for the north side,
Side,
middle, high.
north,
Look for land for middle, high.
2.4 million.
Well, it'll be more than that because we're looking at a high school now, too.
Well, and I had a thought on that as well. I was going to suggest that we just add 231 North land at the same 2.4 million into that same time frame of July 17. That way, if we happen to find something that would be large enough, there's 2.4 in the July 17, there's 2.4 in the next year, which maybe we call July 18, and depending on what we find, we may go back, as this is a dynamic document and everything, and we grab 2 parcels or 3 schools worth, depending on what we find. But certainly, I agree with Mr. Young completely. The 2.4 needs to be in the July 17, but I'm not convinced that another 2.4 doesn't need to continue to lay there in the July 18.
Sandy, you got that?
Which way do y'all want it?
How many acres would we need for the high school and the middle?
The high school in the middle, I would say that we need at least 75.
75, that was the number I was gonna say. So, we gotta get a number large enough, because when you purchase, you're gonna have to purchase that one block at one time. The number's gotta be large enough to,
But that's not the 4.7, that's the 843 school. That would be
that's a
more
different,
like,
that's a whole different thing.
well, I understand, but that would be more like the 3.2 that is a 2-school purchase. Is that right?
That's right.
So it's not moving 2.4 to July 17, but moving it and making it 3.5.
That's correct.
I'm cool with that.
I think that's what you're saying too.
Yes.
Oh, you others, see if they got other things they want to do, Mr. Jordan.
Another thing that I would like to see happen is I'd like to see the site work and the FFE 8.95 for Rockvale moved into the July 17 and show there as well, so that, as you say, Mr. Odom, we can pursue the start of funding for that.
We're already showing it there by the way this sheet works. We're showing that as 2017 funds.
You have much of your pad. Remember when we did the middle, we did a lot of the pad, very like we did for Stewart's Creek. So one thing that should make the commission happy.
We're saying that we need the funding by May of 2017 for those pieces. So we've got that one covered, I believe.
Okay, all right.
One of the challenges we always have with this is we look at it school by school. The commission always likes to look at it by borrowing period. And when we change our year school by school format to borrowing period, the numbers can shift significantly as far as debt service burden.
Well, I have no argument with that at all. You're exactly correct. But I think it's a fair statement to say that the Rutherford County school system is facing either overcrowding or potential overcrowding at just about every level of school, at just about every part of the county. And frankly, I think the county commission understands that. Now, whether they will go along with the money problem to help solve that, and in what order, I don't know. But surely people, I mean, all you got to do is look at these enrollments, and you can tell. But board, if there are other changes now, this would be a great time, and we can put them into the options that Mr. Sandvig is going to work on there.
Mr. Jordan, I would like to say that the mayor did say, county mayor last time we were up there at the Health and Ed meeting, after the meeting, he got Mr. Odermeyer, Mr. Sandvig, and said, y'all have really done an excellent job. He said, you've built schools in the right places, because looking at your sheet is showing that we need schools everywhere, instead of we need a bunch down here or a bunch over here. We need it. It's all evened out now. So over the last 10 years, we have addressed the needs and pretty much equally stayed on top of everything all over the county. So we took that as a great compliment that he had confidence in what we were doing, school board was doing.
I think, too, that some members of this board have taken on some partnerships, a big word, but at least some information sharing with various realtors. And our board has become more familiar with plans and developments and so forth. And Mr. Morgan has done a good job of constantly checking on where people are building things. And so all of that, I hope, resulted.
Right.
I wasn't here, but I think all that resulted in better planning.
Right.
But as these figures show, and as his 5-year plan shows, it's, I think he called it a living, breathing document, and it is, and it may well change. It will change by this time next year. I don't know how. If I knew that, I'd sell that information.
Well, I have started usually every other month, we're taking to Health and Ed, what you see, what we give you, this count of numbers. Now, we'll go away from the third month, obviously, because that'll be over, but, so they know when they see 16 schools over, that means this is not gonna be the first time they've seen that. So we do this now.
I would also say this. I am very, very impressed with the addition, I haven't seen this before, but the addition of the effective usage rate. And this study from the Council on Educational Facility Planners, I think that is new and vital information. And if even the October 25th Health and Education Committee meeting or something like that, even if we don't have anything to present to them then, I would suggest, and not with any teeth or expectations or anything like that, just go make that presentation and let them digest this new column of effective usage rate, because I think it is critical when we're talking about how do we deal with the fastest growing county, in the state of Tennessee, among the fastest in the nation, those kind of things. This is new information that is really going to be critically important, that's going to give them the ability to say, here's why I'm making this decision, ahead of time and forecasting ahead and stuff like that. This is great information. Mr. Clardy, thank you for doing the research and bringing this to us. But this effective usage rate, it makes it so clear. It really, really does. And if just that presentation happened in October, I think we'd move in the direction of having their confidence continuing to win their support.
Well, this board certainly doesn't like surprises, and I can tell you from experience that the county commission hates them. And they're the funding body too, after all. They're the final people, And the earlier we get information, and even if it's not the final information that we're going to have, which I think is the point Mr. Holliday's making, at least we can inform them of what we know at that point, and they're at least as informed as we are. Board, any other comment? I assume that we're going to, Ms. Michaels, we can put the building program on, and what were those dates? November 15th, was that the Thursday?
November 1st and 3rd.
Yeah.
And 15th and 17th.
Okay, for the agenda of the 17th, the work session before that is
We can have you,
okay.
alternatives this week,
Okay.
on this sheet, so then you may want to wait till Thursday night to see if we get it, if you.
Okay, that's a good idea.
I mean, rather than push you, but we can have that for
We
you.
can at least have something to look at on Thursday night. We'll just add that onto the agenda for this Thursday, which is work session Wednesday.
Correct.
Board, any other comments? Mr. Hodge?
Just one more thing, Mr. Jordan. If we could possibly look at, I'm just looking at the Siegel and Oakland High School numbers.
possibly moving that Siegel High addition up to, August 20.
Versus 21. You basically flip-flop those at 88 and 92.
Get that in the 70s.
For what it's worth, I like that as well. It
Yeah, I
gets
do
rid
too.
of portables.
Yeah, I agree.
And the funding body loves additions rather than new footprints.
They do, and they hate portables about as bad as we do.
You're here.
Anything else, board, on the building program? We can wait till, a Wednesday night work session and Thursday night, and then we can decide at that point whether we're going to take a vote or not. We can do that.
Or which, if you want it on the agenda for the first one in November, we can do that. If after you kind of look at it again.
Okay,
Because you're gonna see new totals per year out here and all.
okay,
That's what kind of changed.
okay. Well, we can decide, my point, this week if we want to vote or not.
You want it on this agenda?
Please.
Okay.
Okay, ready to move on, board? This is an official sounding number 6. Any other items? I don't see anybody waving at me. I guess we're okay. Excellent meeting. Thank you for all your input. Thank you, Mr. Director. We are adjourned.